I'm Sarah Martinez, 34 years old, and the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes wasn't my husband's relieved face or my sister's tears of joy. It was a complete stranger wearing scrubs, looking at me like I was some kind of medical miracle. But what should have been the happiest moment of my life quickly became the beginning of my worst nightmare. The fluorescent lights of Seattle General Hospital burned my eyes as I tried to speak, but only a raspy whisper came out. My throat felt like I'd been swallowing broken glass for months. How long? The nurse, a young woman with kind eyes and nervous hands, dropped the chart she was holding. Her expression shifted from excitement to something that looked almost like pity, and that's when I knew something was terribly wrong. Ms. Martinez, you've been in a coma for 18 months. Let me get Dr. Peterson. 18 months. The words hit me like a freight train derailing at full speed. I tried to process what that meant while machines beeped around me, monitoring every breath, every heartbeat that had somehow kept going while my world apparently crumbled without me. My body felt foreign, weak, like it belonged to someone else. My muscles had atrophied to the point where I could barely lift my head, and my hair hung in limp strands around a face I didn't recognize in the reflection of the window. If you're watching this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button because what I discovered after waking up will shock you to your core. And trust me, you won't want to miss a single detail of how I got my revenge. The room smelled of antiseptic and something else. Neglect, maybe, or abandonment. There were no flowers, no get-well cards, no signs that anyone had been visiting regularly. Just standard hospital equipment and that antiseptic smell that seemed to have seeped into my very skin. Where's David? My husband? I croaked, each word feeling like I was coughing up razor blades. The nurse hesitated, fumbling with her stethoscope, and that same pitying look crossed her face again. Something cold and heavy settled in my stomach like a stone. He'll be here soon. Let's focus on your recovery first, okay? You've been through so much. But I wasn't focused on recovery. I was focused on the way she avoided my eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted my IV, the way she kept glancing toward the door like she was expecting someone to come in and tell her what to say. In those first conscious moments, with my mind still foggy from months of medically induced sleep, I was already picking up on the subtle signs that something was catastrophically wrong. The rain outside my hospital window matched the growing dread in my chest. Seattle's perpetual drizzle had always been comforting before, a gentle soundtrack to the life I'd built here. But now it felt ominous, like the city itself was mourning something I didn't yet understand. Each drop against the glass seemed to whisper warnings I couldn't quite hear. My body was weak, muscles atrophied from months of stillness, but my mind was sharp enough to catch every micro-expression, every hesitation from the medical staff. I'd built a successful restaurant by reading people, by understanding what they weren't saying as much as what they were. Those skills hadn't disappeared during my coma. "Nurse," I called out as she started to leave the room. "What's your name?" "Jennifer. Jennifer Walsh." She turned back, and I could see she was young, probably new to the job, still uncomfortable with the harder parts of patient care. "Jennifer, I need you to be honest with me. Is there something I should know? Something about my family? My situation?" She looked torn, glancing again toward the hallway. I really think you should wait for Dr. Peterson. She'll be able to explain everything much better than I can. How long until she gets here? She's finishing her rounds. Maybe 20 minutes? 20 minutes to sit in this sterile room with nothing but my growing anxiety and the sound of rain against windows. 20 minutes to wonder why my husband hadn't been here when I woke up. Why there were no signs of recent visitors. Why everyone seemed to be walking on eggshells around me. I tried to piece together my last clear memories. The accident came back in fragments. Driving home from the restaurant late on a Tuesday night. The intersection where I'd stopped at a red light. The massive pickup truck that ran the red light and slammed into my driver's side door at 40 miles per hour. The sound of metal crushing, glass exploding, and then nothing. "Jennifer," I called out again. "The restaurant, Bella Vista. Is it still running?" Her face went pale. Oh God, I really can't. Dr. Peterson will be here soon, I promise." But her reaction told me everything I needed to know. My restaurant, my baby, The Italian place I'd spent 5 years building from nothing into one of Seattle's most beloved neighborhood gems. Something had happened to it. Something bad. When Dr. Peterson finally arrived, a kind-faced woman in her 50s with graying hair and tired eyes, she sat down beside my bed with the careful movements of someone about to deliver devastating news. I'd seen that posture before, back when my mother was dying of cancer. It was the posture of someone who'd learned how to break hearts professionally. "Sarah, welcome back," she said, her voice gentle but strained. "You've been through quite an ordeal. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," I said, attempting dark humor. Which, if I remember correctly, is exactly what happened. She smiled briefly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Your sense of humor survived intact. That's a good sign. Sarah, I need to ask you some questions to assess your cognitive function. Can you tell me your full name and date of birth?" "Sarah Elena Martinez, born March 15th, 1989. "Good. Do you remember what year it is?" I had to think about that. "When I had the accident, it was September 2022. It's March 2024 now. You've been in a medically induced coma for 18 months. We had to keep you sedated while your brain healed from the trauma. March 2024. I'd lost a year and a half of my life, a year and a half of my restaurant, my marriage, my carefully planned future. The accident," I whispered, more fragments of memory flickering back. "There was so much blood. I remember thinking I was going to die. You very nearly did. You suffered severe traumatic brain injury, multiple fractures, internal bleeding. We weren't sure you'd wake up, and if you did, we weren't sure how much cognitive function you'd retain." She paused, studying my face with professional interest. "But you seem remarkably lucid for someone who just woke up from such an extended coma." "Dr. Peterson," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, "I need you to tell me what happened to my life while I was unconscious. And I need you to tell me now, because everyone in this hospital is acting like someone died, and I'm starting to think that someone was me." She sighed, the sound of someone who'd been dreading this conversation for months. "Sarah, your family has been dealing with a lot of difficult decisions during your absence. Financial decisions, legal decisions. They've been under enormous pressure. Family decisions." The words carried weight I couldn't yet understand, but every instinct I had was screaming that something was wrong. Very, very wrong. "What kind of decisions?" "I think it would be better if your husband explained the details. He's been handling your affairs while you've been incapacitated." "Where is he?" The question came out sharper than I intended. "Why wasn't he here when I woke up? Why isn't he here now?" Dr. Peterson looked uncomfortable. "I believe he's been notified that you're conscious. I'm sure he'll be here soon." But something in her tone told me she wasn't sure at all. Something in her tone told me that David's absence wasn't an oversight or bad timing. It was a choice. As if summoned by my growing suspicion, my phone started buzzing on the bedside table. My phone, which had somehow survived the accident and been charging here in my room for God knows how long. I reached for it with trembling hands, and what I saw on the screen made my blood run cold. 17 missed calls from my sister Emma, 43 unread text messages, and the most recent message, sent just 10 minutes ago. "Sarah, if you're reading this, please call me before you talk to anyone else. Please. There are things you need to know." I looked up at Dr. Peterson, who was watching me with the careful attention of someone monitoring a patient for signs of psychological distress. "Doctor, I need to ask you something, and I need you to give me a straight answer." "Of course. While I was in this coma, was there ever a point where you thought I wouldn't wake up? Where you told my family I might be permanently brain dead or vegetative?" Her expression shifted, becoming guarded. "Sarah, coma recovery is a complex process. There were certainly periods where your prognosis was uncertain. That's not what I asked. Did you ever tell my family that I was brain dead or permanently vegetative?" A long pause. "No, I did not. Your brain activity remained consistent throughout your coma. While your recovery was uncertain, I never declared you to be in a permanent vegetative state." The cold stone in my stomach grew heavier. Then why would my husband need to make legal decisions about my affairs? Dr. Peterson's silence was answer enough. I spent the next hour making phone calls, each one revealing another piece of a puzzle I desperately didn't want to solve. My business partner at the restaurant told me Bella Vista had been sold months ago. My bank told me my accounts had been emptied by someone with legal authority over my finances. My insurance company told me my life insurance policy had been inquired about multiple times by my husband, who wanted to know when it would pay out. By the time David finally showed up, 2 days after I'd woken up, I'd already learned enough to know that the man walking into my hospital room wasn't coming to celebrate my miraculous recovery. He was coming to manage a problem he'd hoped would never wake up. 2 days later, when David finally showed up, I barely recognized the man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health. My husband of 8 years walked into that hospital room wearing a new designer suit I'd never seen, a Rolex that definitely wasn't there before my accident, and an expression that made my blood run cold. This wasn't the face of a man who'd spent 18 months praying for his wife to wake up. This was the face of a man who'd been caught. "Sarah," he said, not moving to embrace me, not even coming close enough to the bed to touch my hand. "You're awake." The simple statement hung in the air between us like an accusation. Not, "Thank God you're awake," or, "I've missed you so much," or any of the things a loving husband might say to his wife who'd just returned from the brink of death. Just a flat acknowledgement of an inconvenient fact. "Where have you been?" My voice was stronger now, fueled by a growing anger I couldn't yet fully understand. "I've been conscious for 3 days. 3 days, David. 3 days of asking every nurse, every doctor, every person who walked into this room where my husband was." He shifted uncomfortably, adjusting that expensive watch that probably cost more than most people made in a month. His hair was different too, styled in a way that spoke of expensive salons and regular maintenance. Everything about him screamed money, success, the kind of polish that came from not worrying about finances. "I've been handling things," he said, his voice carrying a defensive edge. "The medical bills, the house, your business. It's been complicated, Sarah. You have no idea how complicated." "What do you mean, handling things?" I struggled to sit up straighter, every movement still a monumental effort, but I needed to look him in the eye. "What's complicated about visiting your wife in the hospital?" He looked around the room, anywhere but at me, and I noticed something else that made my heart race with anger. The tan line on his ring finger where his wedding band used to be was gone. Not fresh, like he'd just removed it. Completely gone, like he hadn't worn it in months. "David," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "where's your wedding ring?" His hand instinctively moved to cover the spot, but it was too late. "Sarah, that's one of the things we need to discuss." "We need to discuss why you're not wearing your wedding ring?" My voice was getting louder, and I could see him glancing nervously toward the door. "We need to discuss why you haven't been here. We need to discuss why you're dressed like you just walked out of a magazine while I'm lying here trying to figure out what happened to my life." That's when he delivered the first blow, the one that shattered what was left of my old world. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. When the doctors said you might never wake up, that you could be in a vegetative state permanently, I had to make some difficult decisions. The machines around me started beeping faster as my heart rate spiked. What kind of decisions? Legal decisions, financial decisions." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes was worse than anger or resentment. It was indifference. The medical bills were astronomical. Your business was failing without you there to run it. The house payments were falling behind. So what did you do? Each word came out sharper than the last. "I had to petition the court to have you declared legally incompetent. I became your legal guardian. It gave me the authority to make decisions about your assets, your medical care, your future." The room spun around me. Legally incompetent. Guardian. Assets. "You mean you had the authority to steal everything I worked for?" "It wasn't stealing." His voice rose. Then he caught himself, glancing toward the door where nurses were probably wondering what was happening. "It was survival, Sarah. Do you have any idea what 18 months of intensive care costs? The experimental treatments we tried? The consultations with specialists across the country?" But I was barely listening anymore because the pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. "How long after my accident did you file for guardianship?" "Sarah, that's not important." "How long, David?" 3 months, he mumbled. 3 months. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. You waited 3 months after a traumatic brain injury to declare me legally incompetent and take control of everything I owned. The doctors said, Dr. Peterson told me she never declared me brain dead or permanently vegetative. She said my brain activity was consistent throughout the coma. His face went pale. Sarah, you don't understand the pressure I was under. The bills, the business failing, your sister constantly calling and crying. Emma, just saying her name made me feel sick. Where is Emma in all this? She helped me make some of the decisions. She was worried about you too. Helped him make decisions. About my life, my assets, my future. While I lay unconscious and helpless. What decisions did you make, David? He started pacing the small room, and I could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the hospital's air conditioning. The restaurant was hemorrhaging money. Without you there to manage it, the staff didn't know what to do. Suppliers were demanding payment. Customers stopped coming. We were looking at bankruptcy. So you closed it? We had to sell it. He stopped pacing and looked at me with what might have been defiance. The debt was overwhelming. Between the restaurant's losses and your medical bills, we were looking at complete financial ruin. Who did you sell it to? But I already knew. I'd known since the moment I'd seen him in that expensive suit. Marcus Delacroix. The name hit me like a physical blow. Marcus Delacroix, the restaurant mogul who'd been trying to buy me out for 2 years before my accident. The man who'd made increasingly aggressive offers, each one more insulting than the last. The man who'd made it clear that if I wouldn't sell willingly, he'd find other ways to get what he wanted. Marcus Delacroix, who owned half the restaurants in Seattle and had a reputation for crushing small business owners who wouldn't bow to his empire. Marcus Delacroix, who'd once told me at an industry event that stubborn little girls like me would eventually learn their place in his city. For how much? I already knew it would be devastating. 200,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. I'd turned down offers of 800,000 from Marcus before my accident. My restaurant, my recipes, my 5 years of blood and sweat, my reputation in the Seattle food scene, sold for 1/4 of its value to the one man I'd sworn would never get his hands on it. David, I whispered. Bella Vista was worth at least 800,000. You know that. I know that. Marcus knew that. In a normal market, maybe. But the restaurant was failing, Sarah. We were losing money every month. We were lucky to get what we did. Lucky. My voice cracked. You sold my dream to my worst enemy for pennies on the dollar, and you call that lucky. But David wasn't finished destroying me. That's when my sister Emma burst through the door, her face flushed from running, her eyes red from what looked like recent crying. Sarah! Oh my God, you're really awake! She rushed to my bedside, pushing past David like he wasn't even there, and threw her arms around me in a hug that felt desperate, clinging. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw the same guilt, the same avoidance I'd seen in everyone else. Emma, I gripped her hand with what little strength I had. Tell me what happened. Tell me the truth about what you and David did while I was fighting for my life. She glanced at David, who gave her a sharp look. And that's when I knew with absolute certainty that whatever they'd done it together. My sister, my only living family member, had conspired with my husband to destroy everything I'd built. Sarah, we can explain everything, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. You have to understand we thought you weren't coming back. So you decided to cash in on my tragedy? It wasn't like that, David snapped. We were trying to save what we could. The medical bills alone were over $400,000. Your restaurant was losing money every month. The house was going into foreclosure. The house? My voice was barely a whisper. What about the house? Emma's sobbing got louder. Sarah, I'm so sorry. We tried to save it, but the medical bills, the business debt, we couldn't make the payments. My grandmother's house. The Victorian in Capitol Hill that had been in my family for 3 generations. The house where I'd learned to cook from my grandmother. Where I'd planned to raise children. Where David and I had spent our first night as newlyweds dreaming about our future together. You sold Nana's house. We had to, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. The mortgage payments were $3,000 a month, with your business income gone and the medical bills piling up. Stop. I cut him off, rage giving me strength I didn't know I still had. Stop talking about medical bills and business losses and mortgage payments. I can see you, David. I can see that watch, that suit, the way you look like you just stepped out of a magazine. This isn't about survival. This is about opportunity. Because that's what this was. I could see it now in the expensive clothes, the jewelry, the way both of them looked healthier and more prosperous than I'd ever seen them. They hadn't been struggling to survive while I was in a coma. They'd been thriving. How much did you sell the house for? Emma couldn't look at me. $400,000. $400,000. The house was worth at least $700,000, even in a down market. My family home, passed down through generations, sold for pennies on the dollar just like my restaurant. And where exactly is this money? This $600,000 you got from selling my entire life? That's when David dropped the bomb that shattered what was left of my heart. Sarah, before we go any further, I need you to know something. I've moved on. I'm engaged to someone else. The heart monitor's alarm started going off as my vital signs spiked dangerously. Engaged. While I was in a coma, fighting for my life, my husband had been planning his new life with someone else, using my money to fund it. Who? The word came out like a growl. David looked uncomfortable, but there was also something like relief in his expression, as if he was glad to finally have this out in the open. Her name is Jessica. Jessica Walsh. She was your sous chef. The words came out flat, emotionless, because I was beyond emotion now. I was in a place beyond rage, beyond heartbreak, beyond anything I'd ever felt before. Jessica Walsh, who worked for me, who I trained, who I trusted with my recipes, my kitchen, my business. Emma was sobbing harder now. Sarah, you have to understand. We all thought you were never going to wake up. The doctors never said I was brain dead, I screamed, finding strength I didn't know I still had. Doctor, Peterson told me she never declared me permanently vegetative. You stole my life because you wanted to, not because you had to. Nurses were rushing into the room now, but I barely noticed them. I was staring at my husband and my sister, these two people who were supposed to love me more than anyone else in the world, and seeing them clearly for the first time. Get out, I whispered. Sarah, you need to be reasonable. David started. Get out, I screamed with every ounce of strength in my body. Both of you, get out of my room right now. Get out and don't come back. As they left, Emma sobbing and David looking almost relieved to be dismissed, I made a promise to myself. They thought I was helpless, thought they'd won. They thought they'd destroyed me completely, taken everything I cared about and left me with nothing. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated who I was before the accident, and they had no idea who I was going to become now. If you're still watching, make sure to hit that like button, because my revenge was just getting started. And what I did to them was more devastating than anything they did to me. Emma's full confession came the next day, delivered in broken pieces like she was pulling teeth from her own mouth. She returned to my hospital room without David, carrying a cup of coffee that shook in her trembling hands, and wearing the kind of defeated expression I'd only seen once before, the day we buried our mother. My sister, my only living family member besides David, sat in that uncomfortable hospital chair and systematically destroyed what was left of my world with every word she spoke. But more than that, she revealed the depth of a betrayal that went far deeper than I'd ever imagined. I need to tell you everything, she said without preamble, not even looking at me. You deserve to know exactly what happened, and I can't. I can't live with this anymore. Then talk. I kept my voice flat, emotionless. I'd cried all the tears I had the night before. Now I just wanted facts. The restaurant was failing, she started, finally meeting my eyes. But not the way David told you. It wasn't failing because you weren't there to run it. It was failing because Jessica was stealing from it. My heart stopped. What? She'd been skimming money from the daily receipts for months before your accident. Small amounts at first, $50 or $100 here and there. But after you were hospitalized, she got bolder. She was taking thousands. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd thought possible. Jessica Walsh, who I'd hired as a line cook 3 years ago, who I'd trained personally, promoted to sous chef, trusted with my recipes and my kitchen, who I'd mentored like a younger sister, helped through her divorce, loaned money to when her ex-husband left her with nothing. How much? My voice was barely a whisper. By the time we figured it out, she'd stolen almost $60,000. But here's the thing, Sarah. We didn't figure it out. Marcus Delacroix did. I stared at Emma, not understanding. What do you mean? Marcus had been having the restaurant watched. He knew you'd never sell to him willingly, so he was waiting for an opportunity. When you had the accident, he saw his chance. He had private investigators monitoring the business, looking for any weakness he could exploit. The pieces started falling into place with horrible clarity. He found out about Jessica's theft. More than that, he approached her, offered her a deal. Emma's voice was getting smaller, like she was disappearing into herself with shame. He told her he'd make the theft charges go away if she helped him acquire the restaurant for below market value. And she agreed. She more than agreed. She accelerated the theft, made the restaurant's financial situation look even worse than it was. She started sabotaging operations, burning food, messing up orders, driving away customers. She wanted the sale to happen as quickly as possible. I felt like I was falling through space, like the hospital bed beneath me had disappeared, and I was tumbling through an endless void of betrayal. How long have you known this? Emma's silence stretched so long, I thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Since 3 weeks after your accident. 3 weeks. I stared at her, this stranger wearing my sister's face. You've known for over a year that Jessica was stealing from me, sabotaging my business and conspiring with Marcus to steal my restaurant, and you said nothing. Sarah, you have to understand. No! I cut her off, fury giving me strength. I don't have to understand anything. You're my sister. You were supposed to protect me, protect what was mine. Instead, you helped them steal it. Emma started crying then, but I felt no sympathy. Marcus made us an offer. He said if we went along with the sale quietly, he'd pay off all your medical bills. He said it was the only way to keep you from waking up to complete financial ruin. Bullshit. The word came out flat and hard. You're telling me Marcus Delacroix, the man who's been trying to destroy my business for 2 years, suddenly became a good Samaritan? He also offered us money, she whispered. $50,000 each. Cash. There it was. The truth I'd been dreading but somehow knew was coming. They hadn't stolen my life to save me from financial ruin. They'd stolen it because they were paid to. So you took Marcus's money, helped him steal my restaurant, and then what? Decided to steal my house too? The house was David's idea. Emma was sobbing now, but I felt nothing but cold rage. He said since you were never going to wake up anyway, we might as well get what we could for it. He said it was just sitting there, accumulating debt. I've been awake for 4 days, Emma. 4 days, and not once in that time has anyone mentioned that the doctors expected me to recover. Dr. Peterson told me my brain activity was normal throughout the coma. So don't tell me you thought I was never going to wake up. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. We hoped you wouldn't. The words hit me like a physical blow. What did you just say? We hoped you wouldn't wake up. Her voice was barely a whisper, but each word was clear. The insurance money, the clean slate, the chance to start over without all the debt and complications. We hoped you'd just slip away quietly. I stared at my sister, this woman who'd shared my childhood, who'd been my maid of honor, who'd held my hand at our mother's funeral and promised we'd always have each other. And she'd just admitted that she'd hoped I would die. The insurance money, I repeated. My life insurance policy. $2 million, she said, not looking at me. David checked on it constantly. The insurance company said it would pay out if you died from complications related to the accident. $2 million. More than enough to start over, to live comfortably, to build the kind of life they'd always wanted, but never had the ambition to earn. All they had to do was wait for me to die. How disappointed you must have been when I woke up. Emma's sobbing got louder, but she didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. Tell me about Jessica and David, I said, my voice deadly calm now. When did that start? About 6 months after your accident. She was helping him manage the restaurant sale, and they were spending a lot of time together. At first I thought it was just business, but it wasn't. She moved in with him 8 months ago. They're planning a wedding for this summer. Emma looked up at me with something like defiance. Sarah, you have to understand, everyone thought you were never going to wake up. David was lonely, and Jessica was there, and they were spending my money. The catering business was Jessica's idea. She said they could use the connections from your restaurant, the suppliers, the event planners. She had all your recipes memorized. Of course she did. I'd trained her personally, shared every secret, every technique I'd developed over years of trial and error. I'd given her everything she needed to replace me completely. What about Marcus? What happened to Bella Vista? Emma's expression shifted to something almost like satisfaction. He turned it into another one of his generic sports bars. Ripped out all your decorations, changed the menu to wings and burgers, renamed it Delacroix's Tavern. It's nothing like what you built. The final insult. My beautiful Italian restaurant, with its warm lighting and hand-painted murals and carefully crafted menu, turned into another cookie-cutter sports bar in Marcus's empire. 5 years of my life, reduced to chicken wings and cheap beer. And the house? Who bought the house? A real estate developer named Richard Chen. He flipped it immediately, put about $50,000 into renovations, and sold it for $650,000 3 months later. So my family home, sold for $400,000 in a distressed sale, was actually worth $650,000 even in the current market. David and Emma had cost me another $250,000 through their incompetence or greed. Where is the money now? The $400,000 from the house? The $200,000 from the restaurant? Emma looked like she wanted to disappear. David used most of it to start the catering business with Jessica. The rest went to medical bills and living expenses. Living expenses? I kept my voice level, but inside I was screaming. What kind of living expenses? David moved into a new apartment downtown, a nice one. Jessica needed a car, and they wanted to look professional for the catering business, so they bought a van and a BMW. They had to buy all new equipment for the catering kitchen. They'd used my money from selling my life's work and my family home, to set up their new life together. While I lay unconscious in a hospital bed, they were playing house with my assets, building their dream on the foundation of everything they'd stolen from me. Emma, I need you to answer one more question, and I need you to tell me the truth. She nodded, still crying. Did you ever, even once, think about what would happen if I woke up? Did you ever consider that I might survive, that I might recover, and that I'd have to live with the consequences of what you did? She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. We thought if you did wake up, you'd understand, that you'd see we were trying to save what we could. But that's not the truth, is it? No, she whispered. The truth is, we thought if you woke up, you'd be brain damaged. We thought you'd need care for the rest of your life, and the money would be gone anyway. There it was. The final, devastating truth. They hadn't just hoped I would die. They'd planned for me to wake up as a vegetable, someone they could control and manipulate, someone who would never be able to challenge what they'd done. They'd stolen my life, thinking I'd never be strong enough to take it back. Get out, Emma. Sarah, please. Get out, I screamed, finding strength from somewhere deep inside. Get out and don't come back. You're not my sister anymore. You're nothing to me. As she left, still sobbing, I made another promise to myself. David and Jessica and Marcus thought they were clever, thought they'd covered all their bases, but they'd all forgotten one crucial thing about me. I'd built a successful business once before, from nothing, through sheer determination and refusal to give up. And now I had something I didn't have the first time around. A burning desire for revenge that was stronger than any passion I'd ever felt. They thought they'd destroyed me, but they'd only made me dangerous. The hospital social worker, Patricia Chen, was the first person to treat me like a human being instead of a victim. A sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She walked into my room on my 6th day of consciousness, carrying a stack of legal documents and wearing an expression that told me she'd been doing her homework. Sarah, I've been reviewing your case extensively, she said, settling into the chair beside my bed with the efficiency of someone who'd dealt with complicated family situations before. And I have to tell you, what happened to you is not just morally reprehensible, it's legally questionable at best. Questionable how? I was sitting up now, my strength returning day by day, fueled by pure rage and determination. Each day brought back more mobility, more clarity, and more fury at what had been done to me. Patricia opened the folder she'd brought and spread several documents across my bedside table. Your husband filed for guardianship, claiming you were in an irreversible vegetative state. But I've been reading your medical reports extensively, and Dr. Peterson never declared you brain dead or permanently vegetative. In fact, her notes show consistent brain activity and positive responses to stimuli throughout your entire coma. My heart started racing as the implications sank in. So what does that mean legally? It means he may have committed fraud. Guardianship requires specific medical evidence that a person is incapable of making their own decisions. If he misrepresented your condition to the court... She leaned forward, her expression intense. Sarah, you might have grounds to sue for everything back, plus punitive damages for fraud. For the first time since waking up, I felt something other than despair and rage. I felt hope. And more importantly, I felt the familiar fire that had built my restaurant from nothing, the determination that had carried me through 5 years of 18-hour days and financial struggles. What do I need to do? First, we need to get you a lawyer, a very good one. I've already taken the liberty of researching firms that specialize in financial fraud and elder abuse cases. She handed me a business card. Rebecca Torres at Morrison, Wells & Associates. She has a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when it comes to cases like yours. I studied the card, memorizing every detail. Rebecca Torres, senior partner, civil litigation. What else? Second, we need to document everything about your recovery, your mental state, your ability to make complex decisions. I want a paper trail showing that you're completely competent and have been since the moment you woke up. And third, Patricia's smile was sharp, predatory. Third, we investigate exactly what happened to your assets. Every transaction, every decision, every penny that moved while you were unconscious. If they committed fraud, I want to catch them in every lie they told. Over the next week, while I worked with physical therapists to rebuild my strength and occupational therapists to fine-tune my motor skills, Patricia and I began assembling what we started calling the war plan. Because that's what this was going to be. A war against the people who'd tried to destroy me. The picture that emerged was far worse than I'd imagined, but it also revealed opportunities for revenge that I hadn't even considered. David hadn't just sold my restaurant to Marcus Delacroix for below market value. The investigation Patricia commissioned revealed that the sale included things that should never have been part of any legitimate transaction. Marcus had bought not just the physical restaurant, but all of my original recipes, my customer database going back 5 years, my supplier relationships and contracts, my social media accounts with their thousands of followers, and even my trademark on the name Bella Vista. This is identity theft on a business level, Patricia explained, showing me the sales contract that David had signed. He essentially sold your entire culinary identity to your competitor. But here's what David, Emma, and Jessica didn't know about me. I'd always been paranoid about protecting my intellectual property. Before my accident, I'd been secretly developing a new restaurant concept, a more upscale version of Bella Vista that I'd planned to launch as a second location. All the research, the business plan, the unique recipes I'd been perfecting, the supplier contacts I'd been cultivating, all of it was stored in a safety deposit box at a bank that only I knew about. They stole my past, I told Patricia, but they have no idea about my future. The house sale was even more infuriating when we dug into the details. David had indeed sold my grandmother's Victorian for $400,000. But the buyer, Richard Chen, wasn't just any real estate developer. He was Marcus Delacroix's business partner in several other ventures. It was a coordinated effort, Patricia explained, showing me the interconnected business relationships she'd uncovered. Marcus wanted your restaurant, but he also wanted to make sure you could never come back to compete with him. So he arranged for his partner to buy your house at below market value, ensuring you'd have no assets left to rebuild with. The conspiracy was even deeper than I'd realized. Marcus, David, Emma, Jessica, and Richard Chen had all worked together to systematically strip me of everything I owned, while I lay unconscious and vulnerable. But the most shocking discovery came when Patricia's investigation revealed David's true financial situation. Sarah, Your husband didn't just steal your money to pay medical bills. He used it to start his own business empire. What kind of empire? Patricia spread out bank records, incorporation documents, and business licenses across my bed. David Martinez Catering isn't just a small catering business. It's been registered as a corporation with plans for multiple locations. He's filed trademarks for restaurant concepts. He's applied for liquor licenses. He's building exactly the kind of business you were planning to build. The betrayal was so complete, so perfectly calculated, that I almost had to admire its thoroughness. David had used my money, my industry connections, my recipes, and my business plans to build his dream life with another woman. While I fought for my life in a hospital bed, he was systematically stealing not just my past, but my future. There's more, Patricia said quietly. The woman he's engaged to, Jessica Walsh, she wasn't just your sous chef. What do you mean? She was also feeding information to Marcus Delacroix for months before your accident. Phone records show dozens of calls between them. She was essentially a corporate spy, gathering intelligence about your business operations, your financial situation, your plans. The room spun around me as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. Jessica hadn't just been stealing money from my restaurant. She'd been conducting industrial espionage, preparing for the day when Marcus could make his move. How long? I whispered. The phone records go back 8 months before your accident. Sarah, I think they were planning this takeover before you ever had that accident. I think they were just waiting for the right opportunity. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. My accident hadn't been the cause of their betrayal. It had been their opportunity. They'd already been planning to destroy me. The coma had just made it easier. Patricia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Always. If we pursue this legally, if we prove fraud and conspiracy and get monetary damages, what are the chances that David, Emma, Jessica, and Marcus will actually have enough assets left to pay what they owe me? Patricia's expression grew serious. You're thinking like a businesswoman. Smart. The honest answer is that lawsuits take years, cost enormous amounts of money. And even when you win, collecting damages can be nearly impossible if the defendants have hidden their assets or spent everything. So even if we win in court, I might never see my money or my property again. It's very possible. Civil litigation is a long, expensive process with no guarantees. I was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then I smiled for the first time since waking up from my coma. Patricia, what if I told you I wasn't just planning to sue them? What do you mean? I mean, what if I told you I was going to destroy them the same way they destroyed me, from the inside out? What if I was going to take back everything they stole, plus interest, but not through the courts? Patricia studied my face carefully. Sarah, I have to ask, are you talking about doing anything illegal? Absolutely not. I'm talking about doing something much more devastating than anything illegal. My smile grew wider. I'm talking about outcompeting them, outsmarting them, building something so much better than what they stole that their pathetic attempts at success will look like children playing dress-up. And how exactly do you plan to do that with no money, no assets, and no business? That's when I told her about the safety deposit box, about the advanced restaurant concept I'd been developing, about the industry connections they didn't know I had, about the recipes they'd never seen, about the business plan that was going to change everything. Patricia, they stole my past thinking it would prevent me from having a future, but they made one critical mistake. What's that? They underestimated who I am. I didn't build Bella Vista because I was lucky or because someone gave me money. I built it because I'm relentless, I'm strategic, and I never, ever give up. And now, I looked out the window at the Seattle skyline, at the city where I was going to rebuild my empire. Now I have something I didn't have before. I have enemies who underestimated me, and revenge is the most powerful motivator in the world. Make sure to comment below what you think my revenge plan should target first, because what I did next was more devastating than any lawsuit could ever be. 2 weeks after waking up, I was discharged from Seattle General with a walker, a prescription for physical therapy, and something far more valuable than any medical treatment: the business card of Rebecca Torres, one of Seattle's most ruthless civil litigation attorneys. Patricia had recommended her specifically because Rebecca specialized in cases involving financial fraud and had a reputation for making her clients whole, no matter what it took. Rebecca's office was in a gleaming downtown tower with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Everything about the space screamed success and power, from the mahogany furniture to the wall of legal awards, to the way her assistant treated me like I was already an important client instead of a broken woman in a hospital gown and borrowed clothes. Rebecca herself was a force of nature. A woman in her early 50s with steel-gray hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to see right through whatever facade you might be putting up. She wore a tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month, and when she shook my hand, her grip was firm enough to crush bones. "Ms. Martinez," she said, settling behind her massive desk with the predatory grace of a shark circling wounded prey. "I've reviewed the preliminary information Patricia provided, and I have to tell you, I've been practicing law for 25 years, and what happened to you is one of the most comprehensive cases of financial fraud I've ever seen." Comprehensive how? I was still weak, still using the walker to get around, but my mind was razor sharp with focus and determination. "Your husband didn't just commit one crime, Sarah. He committed multiple felonies. Fraud in obtaining guardianship, embezzlement of your assets, conspiracy to defraud. If we can prove what I think we can prove, David Martinez is looking at serious prison time." The satisfaction that rushed through me was better than any painkiller. "What about the others? Emma, Jessica, Marcus?" "Co-conspirators. If we can establish that they knowingly participated in defrauding you while you were incapacitated, they're all liable for both criminal and civil penalties." Rebecca leaned forward, her expression intense. "But Sarah, I need you to understand something. Proving fraud and getting a judgment are two very different things from actually recovering your assets." "Explain." "Your restaurant was sold 18 months ago. Marcus Delacroix has had time to integrate it into his empire, possibly change it beyond recognition. Your house has been sold twice now. Getting monetary judgments is one thing, but getting your actual property back, that's going to be much harder." I had expected this, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we have two paths forward. We can pursue criminal charges and civil lawsuits, which will likely result in prison time for the defendants and significant monetary judgments in your favor. But collecting those judgments could take years, if it happens at all. And the second path?" Rebecca's smile was sharp as a blade. "We destroy them systematically, legally, and completely. We don't just get you justice, Sarah. We get you revenge. Over the next month, while I rebuilt my physical strength through grueling daily therapy sessions, Rebecca and her team of investigators began building what she called the most comprehensive fraud case in Washington state history. What they discovered was even worse than I'd imagined, but it also revealed opportunities for revenge I hadn't even considered. The investigation revealed that David's guardianship fraud was just the tip of the iceberg. He'd forged my signature on dozens of documents, including loan applications, business licenses, and even a will that would have left everything to him if I'd died. He'd used my social security number to open credit accounts, racking up over $100,000 in debt in my name while I was unconscious. "Your husband has been committing identity theft on an industrial scale," Rebecca explained, showing me a stack of fraudulent documents. "Every signature, every financial transaction, every legal decision he made in your name was completely illegal. But the real smoking gun was Emma's involvement. Phone records showed that she hadn't just helped David make decisions. She'd been actively coordinating with Marcus Delacroix for months before my accident. Financial records revealed that Marcus had been paying her a monthly consulting fee of $5,000, ostensibly for information about Seattle's restaurant scene. In reality, she'd been feeding him detailed intelligence about my business operations, my financial situation, my expansion plans, and my personal life. Your sister was a paid spy," Rebecca said bluntly. "She was selling you out to your biggest competitor long before your accident gave them the opportunity to strike. The betrayal was so deep, so calculated, that I had to admire its thoroughness even as it destroyed what was left of my heart. Emma hadn't just been weak or greedy when my accident happened. She'd been actively working against me for months, selling my secrets to fund her own lifestyle. But Jessica's betrayal was the most sophisticated of all. Rebecca's investigators discovered that Jessica hadn't just been embezzling from my restaurant. She'd been conducting a comprehensive corporate espionage operation. Hidden cameras in my office captured her photographing my private recipes, copying my supplier contracts, and even recording my phone conversations with potential investors. She was building a complete duplicate of your business model, Rebecca explained, showing me surveillance footage that made my blood boil. Every recipe, every technique, every business relationship, she was systematically stealing your entire professional identity. The recordings were particularly damning. In one, Jessica could be heard telling someone on the phone, "Sarah has no idea what's coming. Once we get rid of her, we'll have everything we need to build something 10 times bigger than her little neighborhood restaurant." "When was this recorded?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. 3 weeks before your accident." 3 weeks. They'd been planning my professional assassination for months, waiting for the right opportunity. My accident had just accelerated their timeline. But the most shocking discovery came when Rebecca's team dug into Marcus Delacroix's business empire. What they found revealed that the conspiracy against me was part of a much larger pattern of predatory business practices. "Marcus has done this before," Rebecca explained, spreading out a complex chart showing his various business acquisitions over the past decade. "He identifies successful small businesses, infiltrates them with spies like Jessica, gathers intelligence, and then orchestrates their destruction so he can acquire their assets at below-market prices." The chart showed at least 8 other Seattle restaurants that had suffered mysterious financial difficulties before being forced to sell to Marcus for far less than their actual value. In each case, the investigation revealed evidence of employee theft, sabotage, and coordinated attacks on their reputations. "He's been running a criminal enterprise," I realized, "for over 10 years. And you're going to be the case that brings him down." But even with all this evidence, even with the promise of justice and the satisfaction of seeing my enemies prosecuted, I still felt hollow inside. Justice wouldn't give me back my restaurant, my recipes, my reputation. It wouldn't restore my grandmother's house or undo the 18 months of my life that had been stolen. "Rebecca," I said during one of our strategy meetings, "I need to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest with me. Always. If we win this case, if we prove conspiracy and fraud and get maximum damages, what are the chances that David, Emma, Jessica, and Marcus will actually have enough money left to pay what they owe me?" Rebecca's expression grew serious. "You're thinking like a businesswoman, which is smart. The honest answer is probably not great. David and Jessica's catering business is new and likely leveraged to the hilt. Emma is a public school teacher with minimal assets. Marcus has deep pockets, but he also has expensive lawyers and offshore accounts. So even if we win, I might never see my money. It's very possible. Criminal prosecutions can take years. Civil judgments can take even longer to collect. And there's always the possibility that they'll declare bankruptcy or hide assets overseas." I was quiet for a long moment, processing this hard truth. Then I smiled for the first time since our meetings had begun. "Rebecca, what if I told you I wasn't just planning to sue them?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if I told you I was going to destroy them the same way they destroyed me? But better. What if I was going to take back everything they stole, plus interest, but not through the courts?" Rebecca studied my face carefully. "Sarah, I have to ask, are you talking about doing anything illegal?" "Absolutely not. I'm talking about doing something much more devastating than anything illegal." My smile grew wider. "I'm talking about outcompeting them, outsmarting them, building something so successful, so dominant, that their pathetic attempts at business will look like children playing restaurant. And how exactly do you plan to do that with no money, no assets, and no business?" That's when I told her about the safety deposit box, about the advanced restaurant concept I'd been developing before my accident, about the business plan that was going to revolutionize Seattle's dining scene, about the recipes that were better than anything I'd created at Bella Vista, about the investor contacts I'd been cultivating, people who knew my reputation and would fund my comeback. "Rebecca, they stole my past thinking it would prevent me from having a future, but they made several critical mistakes, such as, first, they underestimated my resourcefulness. I didn't put all my eggs in one basket. I always had backup plans, hidden assets, secret projects they knew nothing about. And second, they revealed exactly who they really are. David, Emma, Jessica, Marcus. They've all shown me their true colors. I know their weaknesses, their fears, their methods. I know how they think, how they operate, how they make decisions. And third, I looked out Rebecca's floor-to-ceiling windows at the Seattle skyline, at the city where I was going to rebuild my empire bigger and better than before. Third, they gave me the most powerful motivation in the world. I didn't just want to succeed before, now I need to destroy them. And when someone with my skills, my determination, and my knowledge of their weaknesses is motivated by revenge, I turned back to Rebecca, and she must have seen something in my eyes that made her smile. They have no idea what's coming for them. 6 months after waking up from my coma, I stood in the kitchen of my new restaurant, Rinascita, Italian for rebirth, watching the controlled chaos of opening night. The dining room was packed with Seattle's most influential food critics, restaurant industry leaders, and social media influencers. But this wasn't just any opening night. This was the culmination of the most satisfying revenge plot I'd ever executed, and the beginning of the end for everyone who'd tried to destroy me. Let me back up and tell you exactly how I systematically demolished the people who thought they'd demolished me. While Rebecca worked on building our legal case, I'd been executing a parallel strategy that was far more devastating than any lawsuit could ever be. Using the secret recipes, business plans, and industry connections I'd developed before my accident, I didn't just rebuild my restaurant empire. I built something that made my previous success look like amateur hour. But more importantly, I built it strategically, with surgical precision, targeting each of my enemies' weaknesses and destroying them one by one. Phase 1. Destroying Marcus Delacroix. Marcus thought he was untouchable. His restaurant empire dominated Seattle, and he'd gotten away with predatory business practices for years because no one had ever had the resources or motivation to really investigate him. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated what a highly motivated victim with industry connections could accomplish. Remember how Rebecca's investigation revealed that Marcus had been running essentially a criminal enterprise, systematically destroying small restaurants to acquire their assets? Well, I didn't just gather that evidence for our lawsuit. I packaged it beautifully and delivered it to every relevant authority I could think of. The Seattle Health Department received detailed reports about food safety violations at every Marcus Delacroix restaurant, complete with photographic evidence and sworn statements from former employees who'd been waiting years for someone to listen to their concerns. The Washington State Department of Labor got comprehensive documentation of wage theft, illegal working conditions, and systematic exploitation of immigrant workers. The IRS received evidence of tax evasion, unreported income, and fraudulent business expenses. But the real masterpiece was what I delivered to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, a complete breakdown of Marcus's conspiracy to defraud small business owners, including recorded conversations, financial transfers, and a pattern of racketeering that spanned over a decade. "You're not just going after him for what he did to you," Rebecca observed when I showed her the comprehensive evidence packages I'd assembled. "You're going after him for everything he's ever done." Exactly. Marcus built his empire by destroying people like me. Now he gets to find out what it feels like. Within 2 months, Marcus's entire operation was under federal investigation. The health department shut down 3 of his restaurants for severe code violations. The Labor Department hit him with over $2 million in fines and penalties. And the FBI raided his offices, seizing financial records and computer files that revealed the full scope of his criminal activities. But the most satisfying moment came when I learned that the city had revoked the business license for Delacroix's Tavern, the sports bar he'd turned my beloved Bella Vista into. The building sat empty now, a monument to his arrogance and greed. Marcus Delacroix, the man who'd built his empire on destroying small businesses like mine, was now facing federal racketeering charges and looking at decades in prison. Phase 2. Destroying David and Jessica's dreams. David and Jessica thought they were clever. They'd used my money to start Martinez Catering, and they'd been relatively successful in their first year of operation. They had steady clients, good reviews, and what looked like a promising future built on the foundation of everything they'd stolen from me. But they'd forgotten something important about the restaurant industry in Seattle. It's a small world, and reputation is everything. I'd spent 5 years building relationships in this city. Suppliers, event planners, venue managers, food critics, other restaurant owners, they all knew me. respected me, and were absolutely horrified when they learned what David and Jessica had done. I didn't have to ask for help destroying them. People offered. The campaign was subtle, but devastating. Suddenly, David and Jessica's catering business couldn't get quality ingredients. Their usual suppliers were mysteriously always out of stock, or their orders were delayed, or the prices had suddenly increased beyond what their budget could handle. Their preferred venues started booking other caterers for events that Martinez Catering had been counting on. Their staff was systematically poached by competitors offering better wages and working conditions. But the real killing blow was their reputation. Seattle's food scene is driven by word of mouth, and the word that spread about David and Jessica was damning. Event planners started hearing about reliability issues. Potential clients were quietly warned about ethical concerns. Food critics who'd been planning to review their work suddenly lost interest. I never said a word against them publicly. I never had to. The truth about what they'd done to me was so appalling that simply telling people the facts was enough to destroy their credibility. Within 4 months, Martinez Catering was bankrupt. David had to take a job as a line cook at a chain restaurant in the suburbs, working for minimum wage under a boss who treated him like the failure he'd become. Jessica was washing dishes at a sports bar, her culinary career effectively over. The business they'd built with my stolen money, using my stolen recipes and connections, crumbled faster than they'd destroyed mine. But unlike what they'd done to me, I'd destroyed them honestly, legally, and completely. Phase 3. Emma's reckoning. Emma's punishment was more subtle but equally devastating. As a public school teacher, her reputation and credibility were everything. So I made sure the right people learned about her role in defrauding a disabled person. The Seattle School District takes ethics violations very seriously, especially when they involve teachers who might be role models for children. When the school board learned about Emma's participation in the conspiracy against me, they launched a full investigation. She wasn't fired. There wasn't quite enough evidence for that, and teachers' unions are powerful. But she was quietly transferred from her prestigious position at Roosevelt High School to the most challenging school in the district. Her application for department head was rejected. Her master's degree program asked her to withdraw. Her colleagues, who'd once respected her, now saw her as someone who'd betrayed her own disabled sister for money. But the real punishment was watching me succeed. Emma had hoped that by helping destroy me, she'd improve her own life. Instead, she got to watch me rebuild everything she'd helped steal, only bigger and better than before. Phase 4. Building my empire. But revenge wasn't enough. I needed to build something that would ensure I'd never be vulnerable again. Using the advanced restaurant concept I'd been developing before my accident, I didn't just open one restaurant. I launched a revolution. Renacida wasn't just better than Bella Vista had been. It was everything I'd dreamed my original restaurant could become. Upscale but accessible, innovative but rooted in tradition, profitable from day one because I'd learned from every mistake I'd made the first time around. The investors I'd found weren't like the predators who'd circled my weakness. These were legitimate partners who believed in my vision and my proven track record. The head chef I hired wasn't someone I had to train and mentor and worry about betraying me. She was a seasoned professional who shared my values and my commitment to excellence. But most importantly, I'd learned from the betrayals I'd suffered. This time, I had backup plans for my backup plans. Multiple revenue streams, diversified investments, legal protections that would prevent anyone from ever stealing my life's work again. Within 6 months, Renacida had a 3-month waiting list for reservations. Food and Wine magazine featured me on their cover as America's most inspiring comeback story. My cookbook deal was worth more than I'd made in 5 years at Bella Vista, and the investors were already talking about expanding to other cities. The final twist. But the most satisfying revelation came when Rebecca's investigation uncovered something that even I hadn't known about. The life insurance policy I'd forgotten I had. It was a policy I'd taken out when I first opened Bella Vista, worth $2 million if I died from an accident. I'd completely forgotten about it during the chaos of building my business, but David hadn't forgotten. Rebecca's investigation revealed that he'd called the insurance company dozens of times in the months after my accident, asking about the status of the claim, when it would pay out, whether my coma counted as death for insurance purposes. He'd been waiting for me to die so he could collect $2 million and start his new life with Jessica. When the insurance company told him the policy wouldn't pay out until I was officially declared dead, he'd actually consulted with lawyers about having me declared legally dead despite being alive. The insurance company was so appalled by his behavior that they flagged the policy for investigation and ultimately refused to pay out anything, even after I woke up. But more importantly, their investigation provided crucial evidence for Rebecca's criminal case against David. The last time I saw him. The final confrontation came 6 months after Renesita opened. I was leaving my restaurant after a particularly successful evening. We'd served a private dinner for the mayor and several city council members, and there was talk of featuring Renesita in a national food documentary. I was walking to my car, feeling on top of the world, when I saw a familiar figure in the alley behind the restaurant. David was going through the dumpster, looking for food. He looked terrible, thin, unshaven, wearing clothes that had seen better days. The expensive suit and Rolex were long gone, replaced by the appearance of someone who'd lost everything and had nowhere left to fall. When our eyes met across the alley, I saw something I'd never seen in David before. Genuine fear. Not just fear of poverty or failure, but fear of me. Fear of what I'd become, what I was capable of, what I might do next. "Hello, David," I said calmly. He straightened up, trying to salvage some dignity, but the effect was pathetic rather than intimidating. "Sarah, I heard about your success." "Did you? How nice." I smiled the kind of smile I'd perfected for difficult customers back in my Bella Vista days. Polite, professional, completely without warmth. "How's the job search going?" His face flushed with shame. "I'm between opportunities right now." "I see. And Jessica? How is she adjusting to washing dishes?" He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. We're not together anymore." Of course they weren't. When the money ran out and the pressure mounted, their relationship had crumbled as quickly as everything else they'd built on stolen foundations. "David, I want you to know something," I said, taking a step closer. "Everything you're experiencing right now, the poverty, the shame, the fear, the helplessness, this is exactly how you made me feel when I woke up from that coma." He opened his mouth to say something, maybe to apologize or make excuses, but I held up a hand to stop him. "The difference is, I didn't deserve what happened to me. You deserve everything that's happening to you." I turned to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and David? Rebecca tells me the federal prosecutor is very interested in your insurance fraud case. Apparently, trying to have your wife declared dead for financial gain is a very serious felony. The last I saw of him, he was slumping against the dumpster, looking like a man who'd finally realized that his choices had consequences. The ending they never saw coming. A year after opening Renesita, I stood in the penthouse apartment I'd bought in the same building where David used to live, looking out at the Seattle skyline. My restaurant empire was expanding to Portland and San Francisco. My cookbook was a bestseller. My story was being adapted for a movie. But the most satisfying part wasn't the success. It was the knowledge that I'd rebuilt my life honestly, through hard work and determination, while my enemies had destroyed themselves through their own greed and stupidity. Marcus was serving a 10-year federal sentence for racketeering. David had been convicted of fraud and identity theft and was looking at 5 years in prison. Jessica had moved back to her hometown in Ohio, her culinary career effectively over. Emma was still teaching, but at the worst school in the district, watching my success from a distance, and knowing she'd traded her relationship with her sister for $50,000. They'd thought they were so clever, so thoroughly destroying me, that I'd never be able to fight back. But they'd forgotten the most important thing about me. I don't just survive setbacks. I use them as fuel to build something better than what I had before. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful that your enemy's attempts to destroy you look like the desperate actions of small, petty people who never understood what they were really up against. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe for more incredible comeback stories. And remember, no matter how dark things get, you always have the power to rebuild, to come back stronger, and to show the world exactly what you're made of. And if anyone ever tries to destroy you while you're vulnerable, just remember, the best revenge is a life so successful that it makes their betrayal look like the best thing that ever happened to you.